October 22nd. I'm Trey Crowder. That's Mark Agee. What's up, Mark?
What's up, Trey?
Oh, nothing. This here is Evening Skews. As always, we begin with the Daily Dumbass. And tonight's honoree is a little different than in weeks past. It's a little more nebulous, a little less specific. Tonight's Daily Dumbass is anyone who engages in a presidential debate drinking game on this evening. Now, why do I say that? Because, in my opinion, unless your aspirations include pissing yourself or possibly ending up in a coma, I don't know why you would subject yourself to such an endeavor. Here's the rules from just one of the presidential debate drinking games I found. This one's from the Washingtonian, Mark, and I'm not even going to read them all. I'm just going to give you some of them. These are some of their rules. You drink when Trump does any of the following: interrupts Joe Biden, boasts about his personal victory over the coronavirus, brings up Hunter Biden, fails to denounce any of the following: conspiracy theorists, white supremacists, armed militias, anti-maskers, dictators, totalitarians, murderers, or tax dodgers, or lies. And now, to their credit, the Washingtonian gives a disclaimer here that says, warning, this is the advanced version. If you're going to drink every time Trump lies, side effects may include headache, dizziness, slurred speech, nausea, vomiting, and potentially death. They also say you can drink when Joe Biden does any of the following: starts a sentence with the word look, brings up Donald Trump's tax returns, uses any of the following phrases: systemic racism, police reform, or Black Lives Matter as buzzwords, hems and haws about his actual climate change plan, or calls Trump any Joe Biden insult, for example, clown, joker, full of malarkey, or anything to that effect. So, yeah, I just feel like, again, look, me and you, we're both drinkers. I know your tolerance is legendary amongst people who know you. I went to college, I had my time in the spotlight, but I just don't know why you'd subject yourself to something like this, Mark. Like,
because it's 2020 and we all want to die.
right. But, like, I mean, we're joking about it, we're laughing about it, but, like, being literal, though, based on those rules as they have been laid out, because I didn't even finish about, there's also, you drink when either one of the candidates says the United States of America, fails to answer the question as posed to them, changes direction mid-sentence, and there's so many more we haven't even named. They've got whole times when you're supposed to take a shot, even, we haven't even gotten into. I literally don't know how a human being could survive these parameters with these candidates.
Yeah. It's like we're trying to merge the two things that are destroying America, which is like addiction to opioids and alcohol and politics. So let's just fucking roll it.
Right. Well, on the one hand, I feel it's like, if you're going to be watching the presidential debate, you might as well be drinking while you're doing it, that type of thing. But on the other hand, it's just like I said, there are no rules you can devise that like work, but also keep you from murdering yourself with booze before the night is over. So it's just an unwinnable thing. We've got a couple other, I don't want to call them honorable mentions because some of these are like way worse than that one, which is why we led with that one, because it's hopefully a little sillier and more lighthearted. But we got a couple other Daily Dumbass nominees for y'all tonight. One of them is none other than the hero of 9/11 himself, Mr. Rudy Giuliani, who has found himself in the crosshairs, one of the last sets of crosshairs you ever want to be in as a public figure. The crosshairs of Sacha Baron Cohen. Borat 2 comes out tomorrow, and apparently Rudy Giuliani plays a significant role in it. Mark, won't you tell us how that pans out, apparently? Okay, Mark is gone. I don't know what happened there. I'll tell you guys about it. He's got the link. He can join us again. I hope y'all can still hear me. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, I know y'all are tired of these fucking technical difficulties just as much as I am. I don't know what the issue is, but either way, hopefully Mark will be back shortly. But as far as I can tell, I'm still live, but I can't see the chat from you guys either. So hopefully if you're out there, they'll pop up here in a minute. And I will just continue alone for a second and hope that Mark shows back up and I'm not just hollering into the ether. I'm looking at my phone, seeing if I have anything from Mark. There he is.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy. Hey.
What I miss?
Oh, me flailing, trying to recover.
Well,
but I was telling them I can't see I'm not getting the chat over here either. And I'm wondering if I can you check the this is embarrassing everybody, but can you is it possible for you to check and see if you can see if we're still going on one of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
other sites like on Facebook or something?
we're getting chat I'm seeing comments.
Okay, so we are
Yeah.
getting comments. Well, just so you all know, and I hope this changes, but for some reason I can't. They're not showing up to me, and I have no idea why. But anyway, Mark, will you talk about Rudy Giuliani and Borat for a minute?
All right, so back in July, so Giuliani apparently got duped into doing an interview with a Russian media outlet, which was an actress playing Borat's daughter. The character in the movie is 15 years old. It's not clear if he knew that in this, but anyway, so when they're doing the interview, she starts rubbing his knee and suggests they go in the other room and have a drink, which he does because these guys are terminally horny, even though they're 85 fucking years old.
Right.
So so he's taking the microphone off, and this is just a description from the video because the movie comes out tomorrow, which we are already very excited to watch. So there are pictures of still frames of him laying down the bed with his hand down his pants. He says he was just he was tucking his shirt back in after taking the microphone off. Now I've worked in television for a while now. You don't typically have to lay down on a bed to take a microphone pack off. So anyway. Borat bursts in the room. This is how the story, the people have seen the movie say happens. And the joke is, he goes, "No, she's too old for you. She's 15. All right." So
Yeah.
he starts offering up his own body in exchange
Yes.
for hers instead. So he's offering you sexual favors to Rudy Giuliani, who's hurriedly fleeing the room. Right. Of course, the actress is of age, so nothing untoward happened there, legally speaking. What he thought was going on is different. Anyway, it's all very embarrassing, and he's, by the way, just went through his third divorce because he got caught cheating on his wife with a married woman. And the way he got caught was his name was in the newspaper defending her daughter in court in Florida for car insurance fraud. So these guys just can't stop cheating, bro.
Yeah, there's the picture right there. There he is. Look at him. And then I know that's gross, and I apologize, but there you have it. Him laid out on the bed, hand in his pants. Yeah, nothing untoward happening there. Yeah, apparently, yes, Borat bursts in saying, she's too old for you. Please take my anus instead. I spent many years in prison. I know mouth tricks I can do or whatever. And that's the joke of it, which is hilarious. But also, the other thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, what Rudy Giuliani has said about this since it's come out, he's tried to spin it as being, I don't know if proud of himself is the right. He's like, he said, this guy has, oh, it's hilarious, right? Classic Borat. He's gotten all people and he got me too. What are you going to do? As though it's like just, like he was on Punked or something with Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah. The funny part was, so when this happened back in July, he called the cops on Cohen. I'm not sure, trying to frame him for statutory rape. I'm not sure what the charge was. But he called the cops on Cohen, and then they gave these crowing interviews where he bragged about how Borat had gotten so many other people, but he was too smart for it. Which is like, if Giuliani wasn't volunteering to talk to anybody without double checking who they are, he couldn't have got this way. Because he's the president's personal lawyer and cybersecurity advisor. Like,
you're right. I gave him way too much credit. It's actually way worse than I described it because he tried to say this guy has gotten a lot of people, but he didn't get me, trying to act like because when Borat burst in the room screaming about how Rudy Giuliani should fuck him in the butt and all this stuff, he was wise to it then, which makes him smarter than all these other people, and he deserves credit, right? Like that's the angle he's taking.
If you're a regular person out there in the street, like the whole reason Borat, I'm assuming, brought a fake daughter into this movie is so he can run pranks without being recognized, right? The same way Ashton Kutcher used other actors on Punk. So there's nothing bad about a regular person getting fooled when you're the person you can't recognize. No harm, no foul. But again, he was the mayor of New York during 9/11. He was a former federal prosecutor, and he's the president's personal lawyer, and he's just constantly getting tricked by dumb shit. It's like the highest level of our government is that he's constantly getting baba booied in 2020. And this is the same day that it came out that this dude in, was it Sweden or Denmark, hacked Trump's Twitter. He's a white hat hacker, so he's trying to do benevolent security checks, but he's able to hack it just because Trump's Twitter password was MAGA 2020 exclamation point, right? Now, a person with bad intentions gets in there and announces we're nuking China, bad shit could happen, right? So,
Right. No, yeah, no, I mean, yes. And also, correct me if I'm wrong, that the guy who hacked Trump's Twitter account, who again hacked it by guessing the password, which was MAGA 2020 with an exclamation point.
yeah.
That same guy had hacked Trump's Twitter account before in 2016, at which time his password was "You're fired," all one word, all lowercase, no numbers, no special characters. That's apparently all true, right? Like that all, like as far as we know, that all actually happened. That is fucking absurd because like to me that indicates that he has to be refusing to listen to the IT people that work in the White House or work for his administration. You know what I mean? Because that shouldn't be allowed to happen. And the only way it could happen is if he says, "No, fuck y'all, I don't give a shit," right? Otherwise, I don't understand how that's even possible.
What? And if you remember early on in the Trump administration, the first press secretary, Sean Spicer, that's his name, the Dance with the Stars dipshit. He kept accidentally tweeting out his password when he was trying to log into his account, and it was all like super hard to generate code, like a bunch of like random numbers and letters, as any sort of like high quality code should be. But like Trump's is just words. Like at least Spicer was trying to have some operational security.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, what do you do? What are we doing this on right now on your end? Your cell phone or what? I know it fucked up
Yeah.
earlier.
So we just moved apart, and AT&T fucking sucks, and they can get their internet hooked up. So I was tethered to my iPad using data, but I ran out of my data limit on my iPad, so now I'm on my cell phone. So I hope that's working.
Well, it is working, but do you have a pair of headphones or something like that you can plug into your cell phone so you can hear
Yeah.
me and I won't hear myself? But I admire your, you know, persistence there in making it work. And once again, sorry for all this bullshit, everybody. And that, it's not just tonight, as you know, if you've been watching us for a while, we run into this shit fairly often, embarrassingly often. But you know, it's just part of the having a doing a live show from your houses, I suppose. But anyway, so let's talk about the big thing going on tonight. Obviously, the final presidential debate, if you could call it that. Who knows what's going to happen? Now, I said last time after the first debate, the next show we had after that, the show before the first debate, I was very vocally saying, fuck everybody that acts like Joe Biden shouldn't debate this guy. You can't do that. You can't show weakness like that. You got to debate this guy. And then the debate happened. And in the next episode after the debate, I, admitted that I was wrong. There's nothing to be gained from debating this motherfucker, given the way he operates, right? Which I still believe to be true. But at the very least, we know that the debate commission has instituted new rules where they actually can and will mute the participants when it's not their turn to talk. So ostensibly, Trump should be muted when, the onus is not on him tonight. Now, who knows how he'll actually handle that, which is one of the things many people are going to be, tuning in to see how it turns out. But you would think that even just with that one little adjustment, hopefully it won't be quite the shit show that it was last time. But I don't know how anyone could be optimistic, given how it played out.
I mean, he's definitely going to wander over to Biden's microphone and start yelling into it. Yeah.
Right. No, but are you being literal though? Because it wouldn't surprise me if he did that, right? Like he might actually do that.
He's the most predictable. He's just a dumb animal with impulses, right?
Yeah.
So he's extremely predictable. If he doesn't keep yelling even when his microphone's off, because it's supposed to be on a time limit, right? Isn't that the setup?
Yeah.
It's supposed to time out after when his time's up. He's not gonna like that.
No, of course. We already doesn't like it. I mean, he's already bitched about it so much, but as far as we know, it's still going to show up and do the thing. And I don't know. I know we've said many times on here before about how we both pretty much agree that debates are essentially meaningless in the actual, as far as the impact they have on elections, which I think is true. But still, they happen. They got a lot of eyes on them, so I feel like they do matter in some sense. And I'm just wondering, generally speaking, again, given the like unprecedented and unmitigated shit show that was the first debate, like what are your genuine expectations for tonight and how it's going to go? This is Trump's last shot to in this kind of forum before the actual election. Like, what the fuck is going to happen?
Well, so he appears to be getting rat fucking blue balls because this Hunter Biden story is not taking off in the mainstream press the way he really needs. Like, I'm not sure if mainstream media learned from 2016, not just to uncritically cover every one of his like guttural utter, like verbal diarrheas, but or whether people just got bored with him. He's not good for ratings anymore. But so he's having trouble getting any traction with this stupid. I'm not even sure it's about Ukraine or China or both anymore, but whatever with Hunter's laptop and his cell phones and shit. This is his last opportunity to try to get mainstream coverage of that. He's bringing a Hunter business associate who's disgruntled to the debate. He saved the special chair for him, like he did Bill Clinton's alleged sexual harassment victims or assault victims in 2016.
Right.
And so that's going to be the main thing he's going to try to do, I guess, is try to force people to talk about that. Good luck. People seem really bored with it.
Okay, on that exact point, like I read a BuzzFeed news article earlier that I actually thought was interesting that has to do with exactly what you just said. You said, much like he did in 2016, he's gonna pull a similar type of stunt tonight and hope that it like moves the needle. But good luck to you because that isn't working anymore or whatever.
50
And I
million
feel
people
like
have already voted.
right.
Like,
Well, yes, but beyond that, the idea that like in 2016, Trump in the debates, now I hated every minute of it, but he made a lot of his biggest like Trump moments in the debates because he said and did shit that no one else would because everyone else is a functioning, politician on some level, but that's not the point. That's when he gained his sort of reputation as, he tells it like it is. He ain't like the rest of them. He'll shake things up. He puts the truth out there. What that whole thing that came from him in the debate saying this insane shit no one else would ever say, right? I feel but like he's played that card, like, and now he's been the guy in charge for 4 years, and everybody's
it's it's
seen it
also
now. Like,
it's the same magic trick, but with much lower stakes and less illusion, right? So it's like Bill Clinton was credibly accused of a shit ton of weird sex stuff and sex crimes and inappropriate behavior, right? Um, that's Bill Clinton was the president. Bill Clinton was going to be living in the White House if Hillary won. I mean, probably not, but their marriage is their business, right? But so, but Hunter is like, here's the president's son. That's already like a lesser degree of thing. And what he's accused of isn't like any sort of a horrific sex crime. It's like uh, using his dad's name to get some startup capital from China for some sort of like defense company. It doesn't make any sense. And like that guy, I watched the video of that Belinsky guy or whatever his name is, who's the disgruntled business partner, whose beef with Hunter, by the way, is that Hunter cut him out of the business. Not that he did that. It's not that Hunter was doing something immoral. It's that Hunter didn't give him his cut. So it's all very hard to follow, and I'm not quite sure why it's supposed to matter in this context. Like, if you want to, like, I'm super open to the idea that like the intersection of politics and business is super corrupt, and these guys shouldn't be trading on their positions for favors and whatnot. That's fine. Trump just isn't the guy to make that argument, just like Hillary wasn't the person to make that argument in 2016. And the only person to really make that argument is Bernie, and he lost badly. So.
right. Trump's been on a warpath outside of just from the debate. Obviously, everybody's seen this week. He's been in a real tiff with Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes, saying that it was completely unfair the way he was treated during his White House 60 Minutes interview earlier this week, set to air this Sunday. He spent a couple days threatening to release the full video himself to prove just how badly mistreated he had been by Leslie Stahl. And then he did that. He posted on his Facebook the full video of the interview he did with Leslie Stahl, and the caption said, "Look how rude and biased and unfair this interview was." And then when you watch it, it's just a journalist asking him like actual questions about stuff that he, of course, is infuriated by, and he spends the whole time arguing that like you wouldn't ask Joe Biden questions like this, you wouldn't treat Joe Biden like this when she hadn't even interviewed Joe Biden yet. And I don't know, this is another one of those things where like I saw this, and to me, in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to backfire brutally because this doesn't play the way they think this plays. But then I think, no, probably not. Like because like this is how it plays to me. Like I can't imagine what they think this gets across, but you get on like conservative Twitter and see their responses to it all, and they're talking about how unprofessional Stahl is and about how she tried to like corner him and this stuff, and they're totally going along with his narrative the whole time. And I mean, of course they're doing that, but it's still, I don't know. This is another example of one of those things. It's so wild to me how differently something can appear to a person in the same country depending upon what side of the spectrum they fall upon or how indoctrinated they are, or however you want to put it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's like one of the side effect of like the way we do politics in this country as a spectator sport. Like everyone falls into two categories. You're either a pundit or a flack. So either you're trying to spin, or you're trying to hypothesize what what another person thinks about something, right? It's like we're all trying to get, oh, this isn't going to play well. People say shit like that, or they're doing the talking points. And my thing is like, what do you actually think about it, right? What is your actual opinion on this? I'm always curious because no one actually says that anymore. And I try watching the clips. I try to put myself in their mindset because I really couldn't see what his complaint was, and
I know.
how is it going to be? Like, how does it work to be like, I'm the most powerful man in the world, and my argument for keeping my job is that everyone's mean to me, and I feel bad.
I know. Right. I know. That's it. Like, I don't, yeah, that too. I don't understand how that plays. Like, how, because they're supposed to like him because he's like, he's tough and he says the shit no one else will say to people's faces because he don't give a fuck, you know, or whatever. But then he just sits there and complains about being treated unfairly by this female journalist, and and he's the leader of the free world ostensibly. Like you should be able to answer tough questions, but I don't know, man. I can't. It's one of those things I can't even wrap my head around it. Um, Moving on, a couple other things to cover here. Coney Barrett, her nomination was approved by the appropriate Senate committee today, in spite of a Democrat boycott. Every Democratic member of this Senate committee did not show up to the hearing for the vote, which, according to the bylaws or whatever the fucking word is, according to the rules they have for themselves,
Yeah.
should have meant that no vote was possible. But Lindsey Graham did what every Republican has done for the past 4 years, as far as I can tell, and just said, fuck what the rules say. I'm just going to do this anyway, and it will never matter. And I guarantee you he's correct, and it won't, because that's what he just held the vote anyway, even though, again, that's not supposed to be possible according to their own laws or their own rules. And they approved her nomination. Now she goes before the Senate next week. So you can say whatever you want about like what the Democrats are doing to try to push back against the Coney Barrett thing, you know, given how all the shit went with Merrick Garland and all that. But all that aside, like they have actual codified rules and regulations that they should have to follow, because otherwise what even is the government, you know? If they don't actually have to abide by any of their own rules. And this is the latest in an endlessly long line of them that have been utterly disregarded by the Republicans in power just to accomplish what they want to accomplish. And it won't matter. It won't matter. Like, no matter who wins, this won't matter. All the other times they just like disregarded what the actual rules say, it won't ever matter. But I don't know. Like I said, what even are laws, Mark?
Well, this did not be construed as a defense of Lindsey Graham, but I will say this: like, we should always remember that Senate rules aren't laws. They're like Robert's Rules of Orders type shit. They set a certain way, and they can always be changed. And we go through these debates like about we're gonna have it next year about the filibuster, right? Filibuster is not in the Constitution. It didn't exist until like the 1840s or 50s when and people, it's really only been used in defense of slavery and to stop the Civil Rights Act. And then we stopped then we stopped even making people actually get up and filibuster, and now they can just like put holds on bills until you get 60 votes. It's like, okay, if you want to stop a bill, you should have to stand up there and piss your pants like our forefathers did.
Right.
You shouldn't be able to just like anonymously. It's all very it doesn't work. And I'm saying, like, just remember that these rules are totally arbitrary. They're not on stone tablets. They're made up fairly recently, and they can always be changed. And the filibuster and the blue slip rule and all that anti-democratic and lowercase d democratic, anti-democratic shit can all go away, and everything will probably work better.
All right. Well, speaking of shitheads in the Senate, we had a request from Natalie Morrow Nichols on Twitter to discuss Mitch McConnell's hands, which I'm more than happy to do. I'm bring this up for you guys real quick. I was not aware of this. I actually saw this before Natalie brought it up, but I only saw it like earlier today, like a couple hours before. And prior to that, I did not know. So I'm wondering if you guys know or not what is going on with Mitch McConnell's hands. Here they are. Do you guys see that? Those are Mitch McConnell's hands.
Yeah.
Can you make it bigger? What is that about?
Some nurse was saying it looks like he's on blood thinners and is a really hard blood draw, maybe. So they had to stick him a bunch of times. But his lips look like shit too. I think that's probably maybe the blood thinner stuff too. He's got weird stuff.
Yeah, it just makes him seem more like a like a flesh golem that was assembled and animated by the plutocrat puppeteers to do their will or something to me, and like they need to upgrade the model because it's falling apart. That's what I think when I see it.
I mean,
it's wild.
Like, Mitch McConnell's never losing an election. He's only going away when he dies, right? So like we all know that. So like one side effect, and we get called, I know I've been called ageist on this show a bunch, but so I want to point out that like our gerontocracy leads us to having to do criminology type stuff. We're trying to guess at the health conditions of our leaders because we don't actually know what's wrong. They're all obviously fail health. Trump was in intensive care. Chris, like all these people, and it's just like we don't know anything. The outcomes of our democracy are going to be determined by whether 86-year-olds can hang on.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. One other thing before we get to our guest tonight. We do have a guest tonight. Given that process works, who knows, given the rest of our technical difficulties so far. But hopefully we should have a guest tonight who we'll get to in just a moment. But before that, I wanted to note that Barack Obama went in on Trump again in a speech yesterday, and he really laid it all out there on the line. It's almost like a lot of people felt like it, not that this was the purpose of it, but that it would serve the purpose of baiting Trump into a tirade in opposition to Obama. And I don't know how well that works, but either way, I liked a lot of what Obama had to say. I particularly liked the part in the speech where he played the "Can you imagine if Obama did that" game while being Obama. He said, listen, can you imagine if I had a secret Chinese bank account when I was running for re-election? You think Fox News might have been a little concerned about that? They would have called me Beijing Barry. And he made a lot of other, great, in my opinion, points talking about how you can have a Thanksgiving free of existential terror or hopefully fights among your family with Trump out of the way. He just scalded Trump for 40 straight minutes or however long it was, which I, for one, appreciate. And I just wanted to give it a shout out.
Yeah, it's some good lines in there. He's just a better speaker than anybody else in their current public stage outside of maybe AOC. So it's good to have somebody as an attack dog who can deliver a punchline.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, so we'll get into the subject and hope our I'm gonna be on the lookout for our guests to show up, hoping that the link works and all the shit works. Look, here we go. Okay, nice. So we got. It's been a while since we had a guest. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. It's because I was afraid because I'm the producer slash host, and the technical stuff gets in my way sometimes. But I'm excited to have another guest tonight. She is the co-author of the paper "The Count: A Practical Guide to Defending the Constitution in a Contested 2020 Election." And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. But aside from that, Becky Bond is a veteran of multiple political campaigns, including Bernie Sanders' 2016 presidential campaign. She's the executive director of the Real Justice PAC and the co-author of Rules for Revolutionaries: How Big Organizing Changes Everything. So with that, please welcome to the Skews, Becky Bond. Hey, Becky, can you hear us?
Hey, yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Right on. Well, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, we've had some technical issues tonight, so I'm glad everything's working. Thanks for joining us. So, yeah, the election's right around the corner. I know a lot of people, myself included, have been terrified that there's going to be some kind of, for lack of a better word, shenanigans from the Trump administration, some sort of attempt to nefariously steal this election by whatever means possible. And I know you have thought and written a lot about this, so I wanted to ask you what you think the likelihood of that happening actually is, and further, what can actually be done about it.
Well, I mean, it's not a surprise that you are afraid of this happening because, Trump and his allies, they've been talking about it all the time. At the RFP, on Steve Bannon's show, I mean, who has more listeners than you do, unfortunately. We've been talking about this for months. And, hey, we're days away from the most important election of our lifetimes. And if everyone's able to vote and every vote's counted, Donald Trump's going to lose this election. According to the polls, he's going to lose both the popular vote and he's going to lose the Electoral College, possibly by big margins. But in a close election, it's really probable that he is going to try and overturn the results of the election by disrupting the counting of the votes at the Electoral College and at the ballot boxes in the key counties in the swing states. I mean, he said he would accept the results of the election if he loses, and I think we need to take his word for that.
Right. I mean, yeah. Why wouldn't you take his word for? Well, actually, that's kind of a trick question because there's a million reasons why you shouldn't take his word. But when it comes to something like this, I agree with you. We should probably take his word for it. But what are the actual mechanisms by which he could successfully do something like that? Because I'm not going to lie about my own ignorance. Like, I'm worried about it because of the way he talks about it. And I'm also worried because, like me and Mark were just talking about before you joined, the GOP's proclivity to just ignore whatever rules exist, while doing whatever they want to do. But what can he actually do, to steal this election or attempt to do so?
Well, it's actually quite simple. I mean, part of the issue is that we don't have one election that's run by the federal government. We have thousands of elections that are run by counties, right? So there's a million ways that we have problems with every election, right? When it comes up, ballots get lost, machines don't work, poll workers don't show up at the polls. You know what I mean? People who inspect vote by mail ballots, they think the signature on the envelope doesn't match some signature that they're looking at on the computer. There's lots of ways that this can go sideways in any kind of election. We've always had this good faith system where the person with the less votes concedes to the person with more votes at the end of the day, even though we know there are going to be some things that are going to be a little bit messed up. But we're seeing this crazy situation this year where most Democrats are voting by mail and massive numbers of people are voting by mail because of the pandemic, right?
Right.
And on election day in swing states, most of the election day vote is going to be probably topped off by Republican voters who tend to vote on election day. So we're going to have this, what they're calling the red mirage. It may look like in the count on election day, right, that Trump is ahead in some of these key swing states. But in reality, he's just going to be ahead in the votes that have been already counted. And the Republicans, why we know they want to mess with this is Republicans have really pushed back on states like Pennsylvania who've asked, can we please start counting the vote by mail ballots before election day, right? So we can have the kind of result, not weeks after election day, but on election day. And Republicans are saying, no, you can't count the ballots before election day. Meanwhile, Trump and Steve Bannon and others, they're talking every day about how that Trump's going to win the game day vote, and any ballot that comes in after Election Day is fraudulent. So think about this, right? Pennsylvania, they normally vote just on Election Day. You have to have a really good excuse not to vote. Because of the pandemic, they've had to print millions of mail ballots, which they've never processed before. They had to buy new machines. Can the counties run these machines? It's going to be interesting to see what happens. So you can see a scenario where Trump happens to be ahead of the count on Election Day, and there are all these massive Biden votes piling up at the county election centers, at the post office. I mean, Trump's already shown that he's used the post office to mess with the vote. You could just have federal agents seize the votes at the post office in Philadelphia and say, hey, these are fraudulent votes. We're going to destroy them, right? And just make it impossible even to count all the votes. And that's just one crazy way that Trump can intervene in the process.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to lie. You're terrifying me so far, but that's okay. I believe, though, you also there are some mechanisms by which, we can fight back, right? There's some hope, something we can do. Why don't you talk about that a little bit before everyone slits their wrists?
Let's do that. Yeah. So here's the thing, is that this is crazy. Like, I've been working in elections for 20 years, and I didn't even know some of the things about how the Electoral College works. Like, I actually thought the Electoral College was a place where the electors went to vote, but college is like some archaic word that just means like a group of people that have a common purpose. But anyway, so what happens on Election Day is that we vote for electors that will be assigned to the candidate that we voted for, right? And then these electors, they actually have to be certified by the governor of the state before December 8th, which is this safe harbor date. And on December 8th, the governor will say, here are the electors for our state. And then these electors are going to cast their ballots for the candidate, that they're assigned to. So, but it's not when the electors vote that actually decides who's the president. The electors vote, and then the results of that vote get sent to Congress. And it's actually not until January 6th when Congress sort of certifies, the vote of the Electoral College, or they decide, to certify a different set of electors. They can do almost anything they want. And because of norms, because of precedent, they've always just endorsed the electors sent by the governors. So here's what people can do. First of all, in a close election, in the swing states especially, if Trump declares himself the winner on election night, even though the ballots haven't been counted, one thing people can do, first of all, is we need people to get into the streets and show that public opinion, recognizes that Trump is trying to steal the election, and that when the votes are counted, that Joe Biden will be the president. The second thing that we can do is we can get our elected officials to go out and say, hey, Joe Biden won the election, because a lot of what pushes courts and pushes public sentiment is this movie that you're watching in the news about what's actually happening. And so pushing your Democratic elected officials to say, hey, based on the early vote counts by party, we know Joe Biden has won this election, and when every vote is counted, he'll be the president of the United States. And the third really important thing that we can do, especially if we're in swing states, is push those Democratic governors to push forward the Biden slate of electors. They can name the electors, even if Republicans prevent them from counting all the votes, right? If the Republicans cheat and take the votes off the table, the Democratic governors of Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, they can send the Democratic electors, no matter what anybody else does, to Congress. And then we've all got to be full court press on Congress in advance of January 6th to make sure that the House and Democrats in the Senate do their job and don't let Mike Pence and Donald Trump steal the election.
Hi, Becky. I'm Mark. Nice to meet you. I've been listening to this great podcast I'm really enjoying called Fiasco. It's about the 2000 recount in Florida. And even though I was alive and I was an adult then, I'd forgotten a lot of small details. And what you're saying about how there's so many stress points and flaws in the system because it runs so many elections in so many different ways, that it's almost like if any election's close, you're never really going to know. and the Republicans kind of had, to my mind, the sort of the correct takeaway in 2000 in Florida was if we're never going to know what the actual vote total is, might as well try to steal it, right? So there's you're talking about the count in the vote tallies, about how only one team stood up for this game. They organized paid protest riots to disrupt counting. The Gore campaign was pressured to not object to patently illegal ballots that were received from overseas that were passed. Like I don't really, in normal times before counting all the votes, I don't really care about minor technicalities about when stuff's when the stamp the date and time stamps applied. But like these are they called them military ballots. They could get them in, but it was they're both votes that came in like 4 or 5 days, a week late. They all got counted because they lost. All this stuff was decided in the news way more than it was decided in the courts or in the accounting rooms. And it was just anyway. I recommend the podcast, but it's like there's so many points where things can go wrong, and it's just like. You got to win this by 10 points, I think.
Right. Well, I guess before you weigh in on that, Becky, I guess like it seems like it feels like we have to have I don't know about a landslide, but a very significant victory for this not to be a problem. And the idea of that being true seems like a huge problem in itself, right? Like that shouldn't be true, but it is true, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we live under minority rule where even elected Democrat president of the United States, we have to have a supermajority of the votes, right? And those of us who work in elections, we talk about, what we need to win on election day isn't 50% plus one vote.
Right.
We need to make sure that the margin of error, is like the margin of victory is larger than the margin of fuckery and error, right?
Yeah.
So there's like incompetence, and then there's, actual cheating. And
Yeah.
we need to win by a margin that's greater than that. And I think, Mark, what you bring up about the so-called Brooks Brothers riot, right, that happened in Palm Beach, County, and in Florida in 2000, like they sent a busload of Republican staffers down to disrupt and stop the vote. In one really important county. And look, we remember the Brooks Brothers riot. I don't think we're ready for the Proud Boys version of the Brooks Brothers riot, not just in one county, but in every contested county, right? They could unleash like a crazy amount of disruption, which is why, people like us need to understand the process. We need to not be in shock and disarray, but we need to understand what's going on, where we can apply pressure if they decide to steal this. Understand that the process itself is flawed and easily gamed if we let our guard down. But we have to fight really hard because, Republicans show they're willing to fight really hard. And they're willing to violate norms and precedent to get what they want. And we've too often sort of been sitting back as Democrats as being super polite and say like, hey, that's not how this is supposed to go. Meanwhile, they're just, eating our lunch.
Go ahead, Mark.
Brett Kavanaugh was in the Brooks Brothers riots. He was one of those Republican operatives who took over a polling facility, and he got rewarded with a Supreme Court seat. So
yeah, Coney Barrett was on the legal team for George W. Bush in 2000. That was part of securing that. Now she's going to be on the Supreme Court. So it is really time to play hardball. And I think too, like a lot of times in these like national Democrats, they're just not used to fighting. Some of them are, to be honest, too old. They just don't have the energy for it, and they want things to be the way it used to be. And then also for a lot of the people that are in charge of the party, same stuff's not at stake. As it is for a lot of folks, right, who haven't been getting unemployment. They are really haven't made choices about when they can, how many times a day they can feed their family. And there's a lot of people who, are still going to buy that boat this summer. No matter who can be the president, and it's just not the same for them. I think sometimes they just don't fight hard enough.
I remember right after the loss in 2016, there was a big meeting at the DNC and like an all hands thing, and the young people were screaming at the people who run the party about how they didn't get it. And I remember this quote that stuck with me since then was like, "You don't get it. You're going to get to die of old age," And it's just like,
right.
We're going to die of climate change, or the wars are caused by climate change, or fascism, or whatever. It's like, it's not like the stakes are so totally different by 401ks versus getting to die naturally in your sleep, like we all dream to,
Yeah, I mean, look, like I live in California, and I've already gotten so much less. Like Dianne Feinstein, is my senator. Like people in Wyoming have 2 senators who vote for them. I'm like 1/40 of the representation. We already have, a problem with representation, and it's kind of with popular representation being able to influence, our federal government. And so we're gonna have to draw a line. We're gonna draw the line somewhere. And I think Trump trying to actually to lose the popular vote and lose the electoral college, but try and steal the election. I think this is where we need to draw the line and where we need to pitch the battle.
Well, okay. On that note, last thing I'm going to ask, and I put you on the spot here, but a couple things. First of all, take the time to give people any plugs, anything you think it's important that they know about. Throw that out there. But my last question is, gun to your head, what do you think is actually going to happen where all this is concerned when the dust settles?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we're lining out for a very large turnout for Joe Biden,
Yeah.
right? It's looking
Right.
really good, but we're also seeing in places like Florida and Texas, we're seeing Republicans are motivated to vote too. So I think we are not going to know who won Pennsylvania on election night, and I think we have to be really ready if we win in places like Ohio to say, of course we won Pennsylvania, right? Just because Pennsylvania can't start counting votes, Ohio can. And if we win in Ohio, we know we won in Pennsylvania. And I think if we get out there and set the narrative, that this thing can all be over. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but what I do know is that we need to be prepared to fight because we don't win when we don't fight. And I like your listeners should go to check out thecountguide.com to find like a document that's written for regular folks and local elected officials that just explain how this process works, what you can do if you're an elected official, what you can do if you're, a regular person, what you can do if you're in a swing state, what you can do if you're not in a swing state. Because we need to be psychologically prepared. If we win outright on election day, stand. We'll all go home. But if we don't, we've got to be ready on November 4, not to wait around. I mean, maybe be a little hungover, but like by afternoon, you've got to be back in the game.
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Becky, for joining us. We really appreciate it. And, just fingers crossed that the worst doesn't happen. I don't know what else to say, but thank you for illuminating some of it for us.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for talking about this stuff people need to know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bond, everybody. Okay, well, yeah, like I said, the first half of that I found terrifying. Then, there's some hope at the end of it. I just can't, again, to me, it's related to the shit we were talking about with Lindsey Graham earlier in the Senate committee. Like, they do whatever they want to do, and there are opportunities here for some bullshit to go down, and given their track record, I don't know, man. The shit scares me. The shit fucking scares me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the record. I think it's going to be fine.
I know, which is weird, by the way. If anybody's been keeping up with our show for a while, they'll know that that is typically the inverse of where we stand on things. Really, I should take that as the ultimate soothing influence. The fact that Smart Mark himself thinks it's going to be fine, because I feel like typically you're the one who's like, no, you don't understand how shitty this is, Trey. Things are
No,
worse than you think, and here's why.
I mean, look, I'm not saying life's going to go perfect. I'm just saying, it feels like people are just exhausted and fed up with this bullshit. And if you believe any of the projections, the most likely outcome is Biden wins, close to 400 electoral votes. The odds of Trump winning are roughly equal to Biden winning 400 electoral votes. So it's not like a remotely even contest. And I just when she was saying that people could go federal law enforcement could go seize ballots. I'm thinking well, what agency? Because the post office has its own cops, right? They're the ones who arrested Steve Bannon on the boat. Remember?
Yeah.
That would ostensibly be the FBI's job. I thought ballots were fraudulent, but Chris Wray, they're already gearing up to fire him as soon as the election's over because he's not towing the party line about investigating Hunter Biden and Joe, announcing investigations with them. It's I just don't think people are going to. I think there's too much. Integrity is the wrong word, but there's people down the chain of command who aren't protected legally if this shit doesn't go wrong. Trump's not going to prison no matter what happens. But if this attempted half-assed coup at the post office doesn't work, some guy who's a post office cop, I'm gonna lose my pension and go to prison over this shit. Nah, I'm not doing it.
Right. Well, I mean, I hope you're right, buddy. And for everybody, listening, normally, yes, we'd be looking at the comments and everything right now, but just so you know, those have still never shown up on my screen. So we broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube and Periscope and a bunch of places at once. In order to do that, I use a multi-streaming platform, and that's where I'm at. It's supposed to take all of your comments and funnel them into what I'm looking at, so I can see comments from all the different platforms. For some reason tonight, it is not working, so I can't see any comments right now, and thus I can't go to any of them. And for that, I apologize. So I don't know what else to do, but just keep bullshitting with Mark for a minute, which I have something to bring up. Um, you're talking about the young people saying, like, look, you don't understand. You get to die in your sleep, motherfucker, right? Tuesday of this week, before we did the skews on Tuesday earlier that day, I did a thing that Vanderbilt University put together. It was a like a get out the vote, a virtual get out the vote event for college students. And the whole premise of it was like, why should college students vote? And there was a whole thing where they allowed the college students who were participating to ask questions of the panelists or whatever, of which I was one. And that a lot of them had questions like, what am I supposed to say to my peers who just who feel like it doesn't matter, all these people are going to fuck us over anyway, and and our voice doesn't matter or whatever, especially, and again, this event with the people who could actually ask questions were students at Vanderbilt, which is in Tennessee. So they're like, we're in a red state, none of this shit matters. And my whole thing the whole time was like, well, yeah, I mean, like, you're not wrong about that, but that's exactly why you should, like, your own question is the motivation for why you should go and vote, right? But it doesn't seem to play out that way, because you can just look at the numbers and they don't, like, young people don't vote like other groups do, like old people do. Like, all this shit we're saying is true, but they don't get out
They
there and actually do it. And I'm not trying to like chastise them right now. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying, like, I think they are right about how they feel about it, but the only way to fix it is for them to become engaged at the level they should be, and that doesn't happen, it
yeah.
seems like.
Yeah, I mean, I remember sitting in meetings. I worked for the newspaper about where, like, how do we get young people to read the local newspaper? And when I was like 22, 23 at the time, and I'd raise my hand, like, you're not gonna, because they don't pay local property taxes, and they don't have a kid in the school district. They don't have a stake in this shit like you guys do. So they're just like, there's no, like, pivoting to putting, like, Taylor Swift on the front page isn't a fix, my man. It just
Right.
isn't. So, like, that's part of it. But also, if anybody actually wants to hear the answer, like, about why you should vote when no one's perfect, is like, one thing you learn in adulthood is like, most of what you're doing in life is kicking the can down the road, right? You're just trying to push stuff off until a solution presents itself. We're trying to make things mildly better. I mean, like, you and I grew up poor white trash. You put some duct tape on it. Duct tape's not a permanent solution. We know that, but you got to get the muffler back on the car, So.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I can't promise you things will get better later, but I promise you they can get worse now. No.
Absolutely. Right. And yeah, and that's one of the arguments I made too on the thing. I was like, look, I know everybody looks at this year and how shitty it is, and it's easy to take everything together and just in your mind think, oh my God, what a fucking catastrophe of a year 2020 is. But none of that shit is like coincidental. Like, this is what happens after 4 years of the leadership that we have had, especially when some major adversity arises, like a new pandemic or whatever. Like, it's not just some shit that's happening to us. It's happening for a reason, and like you said, it could get worse. It could absolutely get worse. You think 2020 is bad, 2024 has got some shit in store for you, I guarantee you, if things don't change.
I mean, a lot of stuff that's happening right now is just like a dress rehearsal for climate change. Like, you're talking about like a micro crisis coming up from the south. the economic problems related to inequality, and a lot of places can't get clean drinking water, and you can't get public buy-in for like systemic change, or like collective action, self-collection action problems. Like the pandemic itself, man. Like the way we get our food is designed to manufacture pandemics. The way factory farming happens for these diseases to jump from animals to people, and so like there are fairly minor to medium-sized tweaks we can make to how we do international supply chains and factory farming that would make pandemics less likely, but they can't do it if you don't have a government interested in finding solutions. So,
Yep. So get out there and vote. All right. Well, let's end a little bit early because in 5 minutes the debate starts. So we're going to end right here, and we will see you guys next Tuesday. And who knows what will have happened, but whatever it is, we'll cover it on the Skews. Thank y'all. See you. Love you. Bye.